The Book of the Dead, Samael Aun Weor, 3rd edition, Costa Rica, -1968 editors. Prologue. Much has been said about death, and most people believe and say that nobody knows anything about. But we Gnostics affirm with objective knowledge that death is the passage from one state of life to another state of life. The common and ordinary death that speaks all world is to leave this body and to continue within another body in a more subtle state that only the people with extrasensory senses can see them. These senses normally develop in those people who give themselves to the patient and intelligent work of practicing some norms of the science metaphysics. There are also people who have some senses of perception subjective, but if they practiced with scientific methods, they could testify with knowledge exact. Many people reading this book doubt or do not believe that what is written is possible, but we know that without not believing, being skeptical, etc., nothing is found, and to find there is search. Doubting or not believing does not cease to exist what is in nature. Therefore, we invite all people of good will to study deeply the science of life, to transcend death. No one who does not have an objective knowledge of death can dare to discuss it without knowing it. Many people with limited imagination will try to limit other imaginations so that they can understand, but those brave ones who have some conscience left can launch into the search for knowledge, and for that they should not limit the infinite space by means of the imagination. We, the lucky disciples of the Venerable Master Samael Aun Weor, we testify of what we have seen and heard. Therefore, we speak with objective, exact, and not of simple beliefs. We can talk about personal experiences without mentioning sacred things that are prohibited to communicate them in the world of the profane, because if we communicate them we would be unworthy. By behaving like real humans and managing our lives in all states of conscience scientifically, we can transcend the second death, of which so much speak the sex dogmatic, and if we do not manage life in all its manifestations intelligently, we run the inevitable risk of disintegration. That is what they call the death second. Death second is the disintegration that takes millions of years. We must create existential bodies to eliminate death. Let's take a closer look at the metaphysics. Let's get rid of dogmatic beliefs. Let's launch into the pursuit of knowledge. Let us take good note of the fact that things do not harm life in all its aspects. Any mistakes that one commits out of the body is not as harmful as the mistakes one makes against his own body. When we make mistakes against our body, we not only shorten life, but we can lose it, and what is worse, we even harm it in its most subtle state according with the abuse that we commit in the physical, mental, etc. We have decided to reproduce this book, with the purpose of spreading more the pure and general interest of Master Samael Aun Weor, which are a cluster of science and life for the one that puts them into practice. 1 page 2. We call on all the spiritualist brothers of the different lodges, sects, schools, etc., so that we can cooperate with the good and manage the life scientifically in all the plans of cosmic consciousness. That all beings be happy. Year 4th of the Age of Aquarius. Antonio Murillo Alfaro. Introduction. Birth and death are two scientific processes of great nature. People are not that are born and die, because people are beyond these processes. They are the bodies of the people who die and are born. It is absurd to say that so and so is dead. The most correct, that is, that such person has lost his body, or has disengaged. The person is she who thinks, loves, hates, desires, etc. The body is just the vehicle or human machine in which the person walks and expresses. Unfortunately, the common people completely ignore his own inner life, thus confusing the body with the person. It is necessary to study this issue to avoid pain. Actually, pain is always the result of ignorance and the error. The people are born crying and die crying for pure ignorance. For those that awaken the conscience, death is as sweet as birth, because both things are neat from the scientific point of view, just as it takes the day to do our work daily and night for the rest of the body. When we awaken the consciousness, we understand that when we disincarnate, we must dedicate ourselves to rest and forget completely those activities of cellular life or physical world. Then we can travel happily by the infinite spaces, because we are free of the forces of gravity. We are subjected in the world of the 3 dimensions, that is, the physical world. Here it is not a matter of believing or not believing but testing. It is necessary to make a modification to our ordinary system to live. It is absurd to allow life to unfold mechanically. We need to do self-awareness of all our habits and customs. We need to know everything thoroughly what we are at all levels of human activity. We must consciously handle all our thoughts, feelings, movements, instincts and impulses sexual. We must know that mechanical life belongs to the animal state. We belong to that state, and therefore we must learn to live within standards higher. Every life in the physical world is always the result of the previous one with its good consequences and bad. Every body that touches us is always the exact instrument of our karma. We already know that karma is the law of compensation. There are those born in comfort and there are those who they are born in misery. To this cause, such effect, the evildoers have to incarnate among the wicked, the virtuous among saints, and so on. When we change the causes, we change also the effects. Those who think that the death of the body is also the death of the person, and that for that reason they live committing all sorts of crimes, it will touch them to pay in their future return all errors committed, believe or not believe, because the law is law and no one can with impunity. We especially call attention to the materialist dogmatists who only believe in the brute facts and the mechanical movements of the nature. We warn you that above and below the perceptions of the physical senses there are ultrasensible operations that we must not deny intransigently, but we must study and investigate patiently. Beyond the body there's the person. Beyond the core is energy and intelligence. Really in the beyond is the cause of all the physical manifestations of the past, the present and the future. That beyond is the superior dimensions of space that exist and exist even if people say they believe or do not believe. We invite you to study. To page 3, we invite research. We invite you to abandon dogmatism and ancestry, because belong to the past. We are now in Aquarius. Aquarius is the era of knowledge direct. It is the era of practical science. Now comes the internal revolution. Already the external life gave its partial fruits to science. Now comes the complete study of what inside and outside in perfect balance. Inversal peace. Louis A. Romero Chapter I. Death. During the course of existence, different types of energy flow through the human organism. Each type of energy has its own system of action. Each type of energy manifests itself in its time. To the 2 months of conception we have the digestive function, 4.5 months after motor and muscular force. This is related to the birth of respiratory and pulmonary function. At 10.5 months, growth, with all its wonderful metabolisms and connective tissues. Between 2 and 3 years the child closes the frontal fontanelle of the newborn, being in fact the cerebrospinal system perfectly formed. During the first 7 years, human personality is formed. At age 14 the energy appears personal, flowing overwhelmingly through the neurosympathetic system. At age 35, the sex in its transcendental form of creative emotion. It is at this age when we can manufacture that which is called soul. The normal man has no soul, rather, he is still not man or has soul. The intellectual animal, falsely called normal man, is a machine controlled by the legion the I. This is pluralized. I must read a book, says the intellectual function. I'm going to a party football, says the motor function. I'm hungry, not going anywhere, said digestion. Prefer to find a woman, says the I of passion, etc. 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 All these I's squabble each. The I that today swears fidelity to Gnosis is displaced by another that hates Gnosis. He I that today adores a woman is later replaced by another that hates. Manufacturing only Alma, we establish a permanent principle of consciousness within ourselves. One who Alma has consciously lives after death. The soul can be created with the accumulation of more subtle energies, which the organism produces, and its crystallization through supreme efforts to become self-conscious in total and definitive form. Unfortunately, the intellectual animal called man awkwardly spends these energies on appetites, fears, anger, hatred, envy, passions, jealousy, etc. etc. It is urgent to create conscious will. It is indispensable to submit all our thoughts and acts to the internal judgment. Only then can we create that which is called soul. We need self, to know ourselves deeply to create soul. The ray of death reduces the so-called man to a simple fifth molecular essence, as well as atomic flowers can be reduced to a single drop of essential perfume. The energy of the death, because it is so strong, totally destroys the human organism. It is a current of very high voltage, which inevitably destroys the human organism when it east. As a thunderbolt can tear a tree apart, so does the death ray reduce ashes to the human body, is the only type of energy that the body cannot resist. This lightning connects death with conception. The two ends touch. When the essence comes from the 3-page 4, old body, under the terrible impact of the ray of death, there is an electric tension tremendous, and a keynote, whose axiomatic result is the movement and combination of genes determinant of the future physical body. This is how the subtle constituents of the affected are arranged in a corresponding arrangement, based on the electrical voltage in the keynote of death. What's going on? 2 things go to the grave. The first is the physical body, the second is the human personality. The latter, as we have said, is formed during the first 7 years of childhood, and is strengthened with experiences. Sometimes the personality wanders through the cemetery, others come out of his grave when her mourners visit her and bring her flowers. But, little by little the personality leaves disintegrating. The personality is energetic and atomic. The personality is perishable. Does not exist no tomorrow for the personality of the deceased, she is mortal. The personality is not reincarnated. The personality is the daughter of his time and dies in his time. That which continues his essence, that is, the ghost of the dead. Within said ego ghost reincarnating the I, the myself unfolds. The latter is legion of continuing devils. Is false divide between two Is, one of the lower rate another type top. The I is legion of devils, which develop within ourselves, that is all. There is much talk in the occult literature of an I superior, of a divine I, but that I superior is no such I. Divine sequence transcends all yism. That which has no profane name is the being, the intimate. Essence is molecular. The essence, the ghost of the dead, lives normally in the world molecular, as well as in the physical world. We use a cellular body. In the molecular world, we use a molecular body. The Tibetan Book of the Dead reads as follows: O noble by birth, your present body, being a body of desire, is not a body of gross material, so now you have the power to cross any massive rocks, hills, cliffs, land, houses, and empty Mer himself, without finding an obstacle. You are now provided with the power of miraculous actions which, however, is not the fruit of any samadhi, but of the power that comes to you naturally. You can instantly reach anywhere you want. You have the power to get there in the time it would take a man to open or close his hand. These various powers of illusion and change in form, do not desire them, do not wish it. The vital body in the human organism, there exists a body thermo-electromagnetic. This is the body vital. This body is the seat of organic life. No organism could live without the body vital. Each atom of the vital body penetrates within every atom of the physical body, to do so vibrate intensely. All chemical, physiological and biological phenomena, any phenomenon of perception, any metabolic process, any action of the calories, etc., have their basis in the body vital. This body is really the upper section of the physical body, the body tetradimensional. At the last moment of life, the body escapes from the organism physical. The vital body does not enter the tomb. The vital body floats near the grave, and leaves disintegrating slowly as the corpse disintegrates. The tomb enters only the corpse and the personality of the deceased. The vital body has more reality than the physical body. We know very well that every 7 years page 5, completely changes the physical body, and there is not a single ancient atom left in that body. But the vital body does not change. In this body are contained all the atoms of childhood, adolescence, youth, maturity, old age and decrepitude. The physical body belongs to the world of 3 dimensions. The vital body is the body of the 4th dimension. The 5th dimension, the ghosts of the deceased live in the 5th dimension. This is eternity. Length, width and height form the 3 dimensions of the cellular world. Time is the 4th dimension, the eternity, the 5th dimension, and that which is beyond eternity and time corresponds to the 6th dimension. Actually, liberation begins in the 6th dimension. The world of the divine spirit is the electronic world, the world of the 6th dimension. Everyone who dies enters the 5th dimension. Eternity opens to devour the deceased, then expels them from their bosom to return them to the world of time in physical form. The deceased are expelled from eternity because they do not yet possess the being. Only those who possess the being can live in eternity. Being, it is the intimate, the spirit. It is necessary to work first with molecular matter to make soul, then refine the energy of this soul to a higher degree, to manufacture spirit. Must transmuting molecular matter into electronics, and fusing the atom, to release the sacred fire which makes us divine spirits. Chapter I. The Angels of Death. The contemporary positivist philosophy is based on the existence of matter, materialism, and the energy. Much has been discussed about force and matter, but these continue, despite all the speculations, being the X, Y, unknown. The reactionary henchmen of philosophy positivist always live trying to define one for the other, is ridiculous, astonishingly ridiculous. Define the unknown by the unknown. Materialist philosophy says, matter is the thing that is carried out the changes called movements, and movements are those changes that are. They conduct in the matter. This is the identity of the unknown. X equals Y, Y equals X, total ignorance, vicious circle, absurd. Really, no one has seen matter or energy. The human being only perceives phenomena, things, forms, images, etc. We have never seen the substance of things. The given substance is not matter, but wood, copper, tin, stone, etc. We have never seen the energy separated from movement. We have never seen matter separate from forms and objects. A handful of earth has a definite shape, a statue has a definite shape, planet Earth has a defined shape, etc. 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 Indeed, the so-called matter is only as abstract a concept as beauty, goodness, value or work, etc. No one is able to see the substance of things in itself. Nobody knows the thing, and yes, We see the physical image of a man, but we do not see the thing in itself, the body itself of man. Only developing the spatial sense we can see the body in itself, the thing itself. Space is the vehicle of the mind, and only with the sense of space can we apprehend the thing itself. This is the man's vital body. What would be the thing in itself of a plant? Her vital body. Which thing in itself of an animal? The vital body of the animal. What is the thing itself on earth? The earth vital. The vital world represents the earth in itself. From this vital earth depends the life of all 5 page 6 organisms. The vital earth is in the 4th dimension. The moving point leaves a trace, this is the line. The moving line leaves a trace, this is the surface. The moving surface becomes solid, and the solid in movement becomes hypersolid. Actually, the hypersolid is the thing itself. The hypersolid belongs to the 4th dimension. We can only see the hypersolids with the spatial sense. It is higher than sense. Actually, the temporal sense is only the surface of the spatial sense. The point, when leaving itself, becomes in line. The line, when it leaves itself, becomes on the surface. The surface, when it leaves itself, becomes solid. The solid, leaving itself, with a movement in space, becomes hypersolid. The hypersolids are contained within the solid bodies. Leaving the vital body from within of an organism, it inevitably disintegrates. The vital body belongs to the 4th dimension, and human essence to the 5th dimension. The angels who govern the processes of conception normally live in the 4th dimension, and those who rule death in the 5th dimension. The former connect the ego with the zoospermo, the seconds break the connection that exists between the ego and the physical body. The angels of death are, in themselves, perfect men. It is very bitter the loss of a beloved, and it would seem as if the angels of death were too cruel, but they really are not, even when it seems incredible. The angels of death work according with the law, with supreme wisdom and great love and charity. We can only understand this clearly when we identify with them in the molecular world and in the electronic world. The angels of life give the human being a vital body so that he can live. Los Angeles death takes away the human being life. This is done by cutting the silver cord. Said cord, it corresponds to the umbilical cord and is septuple in its inner constitution. The angels of life connect the molecular body of the disincarnated with the zoosperm. Thus, they return to have a new body. Indeed, the silver cord is the thread of life that the angels of the death break in their day and time according to the law of destiny. This wonderful thread belongs to the higher dimensions of space, and can only be seen with a spatial sense. The dying usually see the angel of death as a rather spectral skeletal figure, horrible. Actually, what happens is that this one is dressed in the suit that corresponds to his office. In practical life, the policeman wears his uniform, the doctor in his white coat, the judge in his toga, the priest his religious habit, etc. The funeral robes and a skeletal figure of the angels of death horrify those who have not yet awakened consciousness. The symbols funerals of the death angels are sickle reaping life's skull of death, owl, the owl, etc. Outside of his work, the appearance of the angels of death is beautiful children, sublime maidens, venerable teachers, etc. 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 The angels of death are staggered in the form of hierarchies. Among them are degrees and grades, scales and scales, etc. The angels of death have their temples in the molecular world. They also have their schools, palaces and libraries. There, in the immensity of the great ocean of life, there is a funeral palace where his dwelling is one of the principal geniuses of death. His face is like that of an ineffable maiden, and her body like that of a terrible man. This wonderful being uses a totally androgynous electronic body. This being is a divine androgen. Under his direction thousands of death angels work. In his library there are thousands of volumes molecular where the names and karmic data of all those who must die are written, each to his day and his hour, according to the law of destiny. The science of death is terribly divine. 6 page 7. The intellectual animal falsely called man dies unconsciously and is born unconsciously, and so goes blind from the cradle to the grave without knowing where it comes from or where you're going. When we make Alma we awaken consciousness, and only then do we aware of the mysteries of life and death. Every man with soul can negotiate with the angels of death and disincarnate at will, according to their needs. This means be able to extend the life, if it is considered necessary, to carry out or finish some work in the world physical. Those who have been transfigured in the electronic world, who already have an electronic body for having made a spirit, can command the angels of death and preserve a physical body for millions of years. These are the great saviors of humanity, the great rectors of the world. Recall the king of the world, quoted by Sandowski in his book entitled Beasts, Men and Gods. This great being lives in Adharti, and possesses an incipherable age body. To this great Ser is mentioned by ancient religious writings. we will remember Sanat Kumara, the elder of the day, the great Imalat, the founder of the College of Initiates of the Grand Lodge Blanca. Sedadek lives in the desert of Gobi, in a lonely oasis. The body of this great being has an age of more than 18 million years. In his company reside, in the same oasis, a group of adepts with immortal lemur bodies. All these adepts travel with their body physical space between the upper dimensions of space. They have the power to teleport with his physical body between the fourth or fifth dimension. All of them exercise power over the angels of death. They are adepts of the mysteries of life and death. All of them they had to work with the great Archangel. Chapter II Karma Courts. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says, "You've been in a faint during the last 3 days and a half. As soon as you recover from this fainting, you will have the thought what has happened. For in that moment, all the samsara, phenomenal universe, will be in revolution. The entrance into the electronic and molecular worlds, at the moment of death, is a test tremendous for the consciousness of man. The Tibetan Book of the Dead ensures that all men fall, at the moment of death, into a fainting that lasts 3.5 days. Max Heindel, Rudolf Steiner and many other authors argue that during those 3.5 days the disembodied ego ceases spending his entire life in the form of images and in retrospective order. They ensure that these memories are contained in the vital body. This is true, but only as a part of the truth. The images and memories contained in the vital body, and its vision retrospective, is only automatic repetition of something similar in the electronic world. At the time of death, and during the 3.5 days after death, our conscience and our inner judgment are released by electronic download. Then we see pass our whole life in retrospect. The discharge is so strong that the man then falls into a coma and incoherent dreams. Only those who possess that which is called soul can resist electronic download without losing consciousness. After 3.5 days, the essence enters into a state of consciousness of the lunar type. At moment of death, we revived life retrospectively, under electronic discharge, but very quickly and terrible. In the molecular world we relive our life that has just happened much slower, because time in the molecular world is slower than in the electronic world. Under the lunar influence we relive our life from old age to childhood and birth. The disembodied then visit those places with which they related, revive each scene of their lives, say and do the same as they did, feeling joy for good works and deep 7 page 8, moral pain for the bad. After the retrospective work, it is clear that we are fully aware of the final outcome of the life that just happened. It is then and only then that everyone who is not definitely lost, make the decision to amend your mistakes and pay what you owe. Only completely lost do not respond to the terrible impacts of the molecular and electronic worlds. Really, these beings are already so materialized that they actually return to the mineral world. This is Hell Christian, Amak the Egyptian monster devouring the dead with its gigantic jaws of crocodile. The devourer of hearts, the cosmic vulture that consumes the debris or spoils of mankind, the Roman Avernus, the Hindustani Evachi, etc. All the planes of cosmic existence mentioned by Theosophy can be perfectly synthesized in 4 regions: Hell, Earth, Paradise and Heaven. That is, mineral world, world cellular, molecular world and electronic world. The last judgment is the one who decides the fate of the disincarnated. After the retrospective work, we have to appear before the courts of karma. In these courts, we must answer our charges. The judgment of the judge is final. It really is not accurate to affirm that all beings pass to the regions of paradise or to states of happiness of type heavenly after the judgment. Indeed, they only pass to the ineffable regions mentioned by the Theosophy, a small minority of beings. The last judgment divides the disincarnated into 3 groups. 1. Those who reincarnate immediately. 2. Those who ascend to the paradisiacal and celestial states, and those who reincarnate for a long time after. 3. Those who enter the mineral kingdom, Infernus. Chapter IV. The 4 circles. Our solar system is a complete body with 4 complete circles. The circumference of each of the circles has its own time pattern. The circle of the mineral region, called Halarevichi, etc., has a time scale ranging from 80,000, 8,880 years, terribly slow time, very appropriate for all those mineral processes that are carried out within the Earth's crust, in that realm called Halarevichi. The circle of cellular life, that is, life as we know it, with our cell body stretching from 80 years to 1 month, and within this time organisms living on the surface of the Earth. The circle of molecular life ranges from 1 month to 40 minutes, and measures all phenomena and events of the molecular world. The molecular world is the region or regions of atmosphere, the paradise of all religions. The circle of electronic life ranges from 40 minutes and 2.5 seconds. This is the time of heavenly regions with which they are measured phenomena of light and solar events. Evachi, mineral kingdom. The infernal region of the Evachi is within the mineral layers of the Earth. The avakya is below the limits of external sensory perception. The avakya corresponds to the most dense mineral regions. The avakya could never be discovered with the physical senses, because belongs to the regions of the ultra. The avakya has 7 terribly dense regions. The avakya is symbolized by the hells of the great religions. Hell comes from Infernus, lower region. Atomic inferences of nature, these are the submerged worlds located inside the interior of the earth. Referring to figure page 9, when a human being has become too materialistic, too perverse, then, after of the trial, enters the avakya. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says, when there will have to fall suffer unbearable suffering, and where there is no certain time to escape. Those who in each reincarnation became more and more dense and evil, end up entering in the kingdom that is related to them. This is the kingdom of the rocks, where the fossil remains those who were living creatures. These are the people of heart of stone, heart of flint, etc. These people no longer respond to any kind of punishment, and every time they reincarnate the only thing that they do is work in evil and for evil. They love evil for love of the same evil, for persistence in crime, by their exaggerated materialism, have been made, in some form, minerals, have entered in the mineral kingdom willing to run the same fate of the mineral. This is the melting pot whose purpose is to release a fraction of the causal principle, the raw material, the psychic product, alma species embryo enclosed within those diabolical mineralized. In the avakya regress in time, they lost the human condition pass, devolving to the animal state, then they return to the plant kingdom, and finally the mineral. Later decay are reduced to cosmic dust. When these start disintegrate, something escapes inward and upward. That which escapes is the embryo for the soul, the raw material returns to the world of the spirit. Remember the vision of her, which reads, and said all, as they arrived, they turned joyfully to the meadows, and camped there as a congregation, and so discussed among themselves, some mourning and weeping when they remembered all the terrible things that had suffered and seen on their journey unto the earth. Said his trick had been 1,000 years, because according to the number of errors that each man had committed and the number of those who had hurt, suffering a punishment for all, successively, 10 times each. Now, every 100 years they paid, for 100 years they count of the life of a man, and so it happens that the price of doing wrong is paid 10 times. The cellular region, the reincarnation of the human essence, begins with the design. It is wonderful trio starts our life. Conception, pregnancy, birth. It is amazing to think that man begins as a cell, subject to the rapid time of cells and living in the world of cells. It is extraordinary to know that after 80 years his human life ends, overloaded with memories. The internal processes that begin conception are extremely fast, but as time passes, the latter gradually become slower. All organic processes become slower. Their really relativity of time, the human gestation lasts 10 lunar months, the childhood 100 lunar months, life, more or less, 1,000 lunar months. The electromagnetic footprint of the life of a man at the moment of death is printed tremendously in the conception of the fetus. The path of life is formed with traces of hefma'uts of death. Death, judgment, and conception make a perfect trio. At the time of death, says a doctrine Tibetana, the 4 sounds called sounds inspire sacred terror are heard as well. The life force of the earth element, a sound like the collapse of a mountain. The life force of the water element, a sound like ocean waves. The life force of the fire element, a sound like a fire jungle. The life force of the air element, a sound like thunder reverberating thousands simultaneously. The place where one takes refuge, fleeing from these noises, is the womb. Referring to figure page 10, when the spermatozoon meets the egg begins gestation. The cell with which begins the human life contains 48 chromosomes. This speaks clearly of the 48 laws governing the body human. There are 48 controls that regulate the human body. Chromosomes are divided into genes. 100, or something else, constitute a chromosome. The overall constitution of the organism human is determined by genes. Genes are very difficult to study because they consist of a few molecules, vibrate quickly and come to constitute a buffer zone between the molecular world and the cellular world. These genes move and combine under the radioactive waves emitted by dying in last moments. Thus, the new physical body is the exact result of our past reincarnation, the faithful instrument of our karma. The life of every human being in the physical world is a repetition of past life, their good and bad consequences. Time is round and events are repeated, each in your day and your time. That is the law of recurrence. Everything happens again as it happened, but with its consequences, both good and bad. That is the law of karma, the law of action and consequence. Actually, the automatic repetition of events is to make us aware of our own mistakes. That is the law. Unfortunately, nothing we can do. Everything repeats in his time and in time as they rotate clockwise. To change the circumstances external, we have to change first internally. We can only change internally, manufacturing soul and spirit, that is, possessing the being. Only the being can do. Being alone can change everything. Whoever possessed the being has to transmit their sexual energies, volitional, emotional, mental, passionate, motor, sentimental, etc. We need to transmute light of our personality into the gold of spirit. We have to transmute base metals, is say, our defects, in the purest gold of the spirit, and possess only soul and spirit. You need the death of the I pluralized. It is urgent, is born within us. The SCR life in the cellular world is a tremendous repetition of events, and only by dissolving the I understanding and holiness supreme basis, and manufacturing soul and spirit, we can free ourselves from this tragic wheel of fate. This is a horrible vicious circle. This is the wheel of samsara. The molecular region, the legend of Zoroaster says, anyone whose good deeds exceed 3 grams to your sin goes to heaven. All those whose sin is greater, to hell. While one in which both are equal, it remains in the Hamistican until the future body of resurrection. The molecular region is the region of paradise. Those beings who suffered greatly in life and they were relatively good in life, immersed in the happiness of the molecular world before retaking a new physical body. The molecular regions are saturated with happiness. Human essences, in the absence of the I pluralized, enjoying these ineffable regions. The egos of these essences, the I's, remain between both the threshold mystery, awaiting the new reincarnation. In the absence of the I, the essences unfold happy in paradise. These beings use molecular body. Those with the astral Christ, they shine with glory and are even happier in paradise. Said body lies in state only germinal in its sexual, but seed germinates, is born when the initiate knows the mystery's sex. The astral Christ is a marvelous body. People who possess this body are truly immortal, since they never lose consciousness. Paradise, being molecular, penetrates and permeates all the Earth's atmosphere, being related especially with the ionosphere, which is 60 miles above the 10 page 11, Earth's surface. This region is especially very pure. Astronauts, even when traveling by this area, can never discover paradise with the physical senses. Only spatial sense we can see paradise. The Gnostic movement teaches various scientific techniques for opening the spatial sense. The molecular region has various ineffable countries. These are the planes and subplanes the Theosophists and Rosicrucians speak. In those regions of such boundless live happy the disembodied until their time runs out. Dawn, day, evening and night, childhood, adolescence, maturity and old age govern the whole cosmos, and even those who disincarnate, they are subject to this law. In time, these fortunate beings have to return to reincarnation. Everything you see the disembodied is within your own mind. The Devachaniko states that speak Theosophical and Rosicrucian books, so they say. The state of unconsciousness in which fall disembodied under electronic shock is very regrettable, because even though they enjoy with the happiness of the molecular regions, they are not sufficiently aware as it would be one adept of the White Lodge. Only those who have acquired soul live conscious of the regions superiors of the universe. Ordinary disembodied, they projected on the molecular atmosphere their own yearnings and aspirations, and dream of them living in perfect happiness. Adepts do not dream, because they were awakened consciousness and live in this region dedicated to work, according to the great cosmic laws, in the laboratory of nature. This does not mean that no disembodied enjoy the scenery or landscapes in paradise. Naturally they are infinitely happy with their atmosphere of happiness. The Egyptian Book of the Dead and the book The Art of Dying of medieval times, you teach preparation for death. Men dedicated solely to material things, they not have the good fortune to experience happiness of the electronic world, due to the state of falling unconsciousness. When these people live in the molecular world, they spend their holiday dreaming, drink from the fountain of forgetfulness, and dream delightfully. The molecular body is microscope and telescope together. With this body we can see the infinitely small and infinitely large. In paradise, the disincarnate participate in the intimate nature of everything created, penetrating the heart of everything that exists. It is better to know things by penetration, rather than by external perception. Life in paradise would be better if the disembodied not projected in the molecular world its own stage. There, each in the atmosphere projected images of their own mind. Electronic world, the electronic solar world is the world of light, the spirit world. Those with spirit, who have an electronic body, exercise power over the world's molecular, cellular and mineral. Those with electronic body are able to help his disciples to create their own souls. Every true instructor teaches his disciples to create soul. Any man with soul is a true reformer. The man with soul can help his disciples, teaching them the theory of acquisition of their soul. But only a man who has an electronic body, you can work with those embryos' soul in the same way a man with cell body can work with earth minerals. Some have been exaggerated assertions that human beings have soul and spirit. Really, within the human essence, there is a fraction of the causal being, but that fraction is only raw material that life has given us to make Alma. Alma manufactures who merges with the great soul universal. Spirit who makes joins the 11 page 12, universal spirited life. For whosoever hath shall be given and will have more, and whoever it does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And throw the worthless servant into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew ch. 25 verse 29 to 30. The happiness of the human essence in the electronic world after death is fleeting because the human being is not yet ready to continuously live in this solar region. There are schools for the creation of Alma, and there are also schools for sexual regeneration, the creation of the spirit. School is Gnostic Rosicrucian templing school at a time. The movement Gnostic is intimately connected with the authentic and legitimate Rosicrucian school, which exists only in the higher worlds. Our universal Christian Gnostic movement teaches the real path regeneration. Our school teaches to create soul and spirit. Our movement is starting the new Aquarian age within the August thundering of thought. The electronic world is wonderful. In the molecular world, light and sound spread 100 times faster than in the cell region, but in the electronics region not travel instantaneously along a line as in the cell region, or over an area like the smell, but through a volume of space, and being independent from any atmosphere, can travel times in 7 minutes. In the electronic world we live in light in all things. There tremendously vivenciamus the reality of the oneness of life. Electronic bodies move freely with that great divinal light in space. Human consciousness, dressed in her electronic body, includes, within itself, life and consciousness of all beings in the universe. This is yoga, union with God. Anyone who acquires spirit have to live the drama of the inner Christ, in your life practice at home, in his hometown, among his people. This is a cosmic drama that existed before the coming of Jesus. The essence of drama, the main event, is the death of the initiate and supreme surrender to the Father. This event happens between lightning, thunder and great earthquakes. The transfiguration of the main character to the electronic world, the acquisition of spirit, is something great and terribly divine. In those moments, the electronic force moves, and fractures vertically through all levels of cosmic consciousness, open, for a moment, the worlds internal to the ordinary perception of the man in the street, ordinary. Then they occur all the wonderful things that tell the Gospels when Jesus died on the cross. Tremble land, open graves, resurrected saints and all saying, truly, this is the Son of God. Samael Aun Weor invitation. If you, after reading this little work, it is interested in its own intimate self-realization, write to the following addresses. Rafael Ruiz Ochoa Section M-7858 Mexico DF Medina Julio Vizcaíno National Apartado Number 53, Magdalena, Colombia, South America 12 page 13. Alfaro Antonio Murillo Section 4463 San Jose, Costa Rica Central America Gnostic Latino International Congress, American headquarters of the Universal Christian Gnostic Movement, has the pleasure to invite all brothers move Gnostic of all countries Latin America Grand International Congress, which will take Gnostic held in the city of Barranquilla, Colombia, December 27, 1968. They may attend this great Congress Gnostic people of all religions, schools, orders, sects, etc., etc., etc. There will be free debates and absolute freedom of speech for all delegates to the Congress. Set to all, every religion, every school, every order, can send the delegates to Congress. The world is in crisis and urgently needs a great Congress spiritual without differences of race, creed, caste or color. Congress Gnostic be open to all those who have concerns spiritual. It is the duty of all shrines or sanctuaries Gnostics America send their delegates to the Congress. The Gnostic movement met in full Congress needs to study all situations where it is the world, and the spiritual and social measures that we must take to help humanity in crisis. Assist you. Gnostic this great international Congress, write for reports to the following addresses. Medina Julio Vizcaíno National Paragraph 53 Cnaga, Magdalena, Colombia, South America Gabriel Romero Ramos Apartado Aero 1409 Cartagena, Bolivar, Colombia, South America Carmen D. Monroy Apartado Aero 870 Cúcuta, Santander and Colombia, South America Tula Overgar Apartado Aero I Santa Marta, Magdalena, Colombia, South America 13 page 14. Alfaro Antonio Murillo Section 4463 San Jose, Costa Rica Central America Rafael Ruiz Ochoa Section M7858 Mexico DF. Every letter to the author, contact your secretary Mr. Rafael Ruiz Ochoa, who was responsible for the correspondence. He shall bring his letter to Master Samael Aun Weor. Press Review. Francisco Copperos Piled certifies that the above text is a full copy of the Book of Master Samael Aun Weor. They refer to the following information, which only differs from the original in accordance with the review criteria published on the website for downloading. Now www.gnosis2002.890m.com. Title of the book: The Book of the Dead, issue on which we review. CoStar iSense 3rd edition 1968, place in the regular list. Book 33, 70 current revision status. Final without original to view from March 12, 2004 at 11:09 p.m. Link to the review page. It has no scheduled, unless chance to review it with the original to have seen it. Publication date: Sunday, January 17, 2016 at 11:14 p.m. Index: The Book of the Dead. 1 Editor's Prologue. 1 Introduction. 2 Chapter I Death. 3 Ray of Death. 3 What Remains. 4 The Vital Body. 4 La Quinta Dimension. 5 Chapter I The Angels of Death. 5 Chapter I The Courts of Karma. 7 Chapter IV The 4 Circles. 8 Evichi, United Mineral. 8 The Cellular Region. 9 The Molecular Region. 10 Electronic World. 11 Invitation. 12 Latino International Congress Gnostic, American. 13